Hi, friends. Father Jonathan here. I just wanted to say hey and share a little bit of a conversation that we had at staff meeting today that was just really good and fruitful and was a blessing to us. And I thought, I wonder if some other folks would be blessed also by participation in this conversation. We were looking at the calendar. That was our starting point, especially this flyer with three particular events for October. They are church-wide activities, but where the youth play a special and central role in each of these activities. And so we had the Blessing of the Animals, October 4th on the St. Francis Day. All of God's creation brought into a circle and blessed and water sprayed and laughter and cats, lizards and all kinds of creeping things. And then we have on the other end of the month, October 31st, Trunk or Treat. It's going to be like drive-through with candy and displays and trunks, and it's going to be fantastic. And somewhere in between of those, probably a week before the Trunk or Treat, an all-parish online talent show. And we were talking about these things because they are all things oriented in a way towards youth, but they are definitely and definitively church-wide. So the talent show only really lives into its full imagination, the dream we have for if you and I, everybody figures out how to share some gift. It can be a serious gift or a goofy gift, but that's kind of a picture of what community is, right? You get into the circle together and then you see, where do I feel like I can't share more of myself because it wouldn't belong. And then you share even that thing that you were sure you were supposed to check at the gate, and it fits. There's room for it, and it's held, and it's just like this marvelous experience. We wouldn't dream of withholding that experience, the experience of that belonging from any member of our parish. So that's all of these are church-wide. But we were talking about the importance, absolutely, of having ministries that are kind of sequestered spaces for youth where they can talk about the things they need to talk about, but also the gift of spaces where they are engaged and met and found interesting and invested in. And it got us talking about the work of a scholar out of Notre Dame. His name is Christian Smith, and he asks a question. He says, what do you think is the number one indicator or factor in producing across the life of an individual the stickiness of faith, so that the faith perseveres in such an individual to college, through college? If they leave, they come back, maybe all those kinds of things. And we had some conversation in staff around this. It turns out his answer is the existence and presence of 5 adult members of the community of faith who demonstrate a living interest from a faith perspective in the life of a young adult. Not a parent. That's a non-familial, 5 non-familial people of faith, adults, showing an interest, demonstrating a living interest in the lives of these young people. And it makes sense, right? Because children are made to go through this separating from parents kind of threshold called teenagerness. And if my only attachment to my faith is through my parents, then when I separate from them, I have no choice but to leave that part behind. Doesn't mean I'm not going to become a person of faith. It just means I haven't been given other resources for the engagement, because this is not about guaranteeing outcomes. It's about equipping and empowering and supplying, even to have conversations of disagreement. Sometimes you see in the life of faith, folks will say, well, maybe don't talk about that to children because they're maybe not quite ready for such conversations concerning religion or spirituality. And do you know these same kids are getting with their peers and teachers throughout the week and talking about sex education, talking about international politics? I learned from these conversations. It's not just that they've learned the talking points. They are critical thinkers about these things. The only difference between those kind of things and the life of faith kind of things is they have people, adults, who are willing to talk to them about those kinds of things. It turns out that the thing you need in order to be able to talk about matters of faith, the number one thing, really the only thing, is people of faith who are willing to talk with you. And that, again, is not to guarantee a certain point of view or outcome or viewpoint. It's just to gain the faculty, the facilities of articulation And along the way, the communication of love that comes with that. I want to share two stories because at staff we had some conversation about like, well, is this something that only belongs to really big churches or only belongs to really small churches? But we're not talking necessarily about formal mentors and mentorships and weekly coffee check-ins and accountability and all that kind of stuff. When we're talking about demonstrating a living interest in another, and especially a youth, I think of two examples I want to share from my own life. Growing up at St. John's, Dallas, just down the road, I had a fifth and sixth grade Sunday school teacher, the late George Ross, who one day after Sunday school came over to me after church and he said, Jonathan, I just want you to know I am so excited to see what God does in your life. And I thought, I'd never thought about my life as that interesting to God, much less to Mr. Ross through the eyes of God. And I remember about that time, sixth grade, walking down the narthex, and I was stopped in the hallway by Gwen McAllen. Now, Gwen McAllen was a member of the choir known for having this radiant smile. You could not help but think of like the kingdom of God and choirs of angels when you saw her smile. She was a friend of my parents, very active in the choir, but I knew she didn't know me because I was one who knew that I belonged to the land of the invisible, of course, being children. I was used to sneaking up to my mom after church. She's in conversation, sticking my grubby hand in and fishing for a quarter, a nickel, and a dime because we had a magic Coke machine down in the Undercroft, Parish Hall actually, but I guess there were two, only 40 cents. So all I had to do was get 40 cents and I could do that without even interrupting her conversation. So I knew I was invisible. But then this day, Gwen McAllen comes to me and says, Jonathan, and I'm like, how do you know my name? And she holds up a copy of a book, and the book is Mere Christianity, and says, you have always struck me as such a thoughtful young man. I have found this book to be helpful for myself and for other people. I wonder if you would enjoy it too. And she handed me a copy of the book that became foundational for the high school season that followed all the way through. So we're not talking about mentorships, and we're talking about showing an interest in a young person, not through the lens of how they could help a ministry or anything that would be practically of benefit to me, looking at them through the eyes of what God sees, imparting to them the imagination that maybe God could be up to more in them than what they think God will be up to more in them. I can think of, and I bet you can too, of a handful, maybe more, people in your life, whether in the church or outside of the church, who said, hey, have you thought about this? Because you're kind of good at this. I wonder if you should try something that grows you even more. Or just as simple as, I am so excited to see what God might be up for in you. These opportunities, these are not the things we try to like program or make into an event. This is how we want to live as Christians. We are called to live as Christians. It's part of being baptized into those waters and made one people through the waters of baptism. I remember, not to bang the point to death, but I remember in seminary being asked to practice sermons on congregations, God help them. And at the end of the sermon, well-researched, preached my heart out, that I was blessed with mentors who made me stand in line to see the people coming out, shake their hand, thank you, good sermon, thank you, bad sermon. What made you think to say that? All kinds of things. It was terrifying. I was kind of shy, introverted at that point, and I did not want to do that, but I had to do that. That's what came with preaching, I was told. I've come to love that, but a few times into it, I started noticing certain things about people who come through the lines. Namely, you can notice which ones know that they are worthy of attention and respect, and which ones figure they're invisible. And most of the invisible are oftentimes in many places children. You'll see them, you might think they're trying to just like sneak by you to get past you. It's because they are so used to not being engaged that they assume that nobody is looking for them, no one will miss them. And I learned that one of the gifts of the line after the service was to make the invisible visible and to communicate that God and God's people see and saw them. That is the call of each and every one of us. So when you see the stuff come in the flyers about about talent shows and trunk or treats and all the rest. This is the opportunity. You are communicating something of the interest of the whole church on behalf of the church, the interest of what God will do in the life of someone else, and no one else can do that. Parents can't do that. Parents can't be non-parent Christians who show an interest in the lives of their kids. Only non-parents can do that. And so we live as the body, we celebrate as the body, we discover gifts of the body, and this is how we came to be. Some of us have wounds around this journey. Some of us did not receive those words or those mentors, the ones we looked for. Some of us grew up being told that children should be seen and not heard. But we who follow Jesus have heard differently. We know that one day the disciples came and said, God, we got a big agenda. We got panelists and plenary sessions. We don't need these kids here. And Jesus says, I think you got this exactly wrong. We're going to start with acknowledging everyone here, and we're going to communicate that you see them, because if nothing else, I see them, and you are those following me. What a gift that Jesus gave the disciples that day. What a gift Jesus gave the church. So that's the imagination. Again, not just for the month of October, but for all of our months. This is the way of being as Christians. You are surrounded by people whose lives will be blessed by your naming the blessing that God will make known to them, and opening their eyes to that fact so that they can walk their days in expectation. What a gift! I cannot imagine a greater gift and higher calling, and it is one we all share together. So I just wanted to share that with you. We've been talking about that as staff. We all got kind of fired up and shared some good conversation. It is the single greatest indicator of the stickiness of faith for a young person over the course of a lifetime. Every day we have opportunities to speak God's interest, to be signs of God's interest in them. All right, enough rambling from me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I cannot wait to see you at our many goings-on in October. Peace.